Welcome to Momtroversial, the podcast that dives headfirst into the beautiful chaos of motherhood and dishes on the stuff we wish we'd known and nobody tells you. I'm Alyssa, a crunchy mom who's all about organic living. I'm organized, opinionated, and your designated wing woman in any parenting bar fight.
I'm Tori, your ride or die mom of three who will absolutely hold your baby and your secrets.
And today we are talking about parenting styles. Leah is in Disney, so don't feel bad for her. She's having the time of her life. So we wanted to talk about parenting styles because we think it's really interesting. But first, we absolutely have to recap the Sarah J. Maas Call Her Daddy podcast interview that happened. And so we're
Yes.
just going to do a quick thing. You can skip through it if you want, but we're really excited. And I have a question for you, Tori, because I know what my answer is and I'm curious what yours is. What
Okay.
was the most surprising thing that she said to you?
Are just in general or about the books?
Um, yeah, related to the books.
I think the most surprising thing for me was just the air of how she's kind of pushing back on her publisher and kind of how like BA she's being about the whole thing. Because what publisher is going to be like, oh yeah, let's release 2 books in the span of 3 months. Let's make the first one short for SJM and the
Yeah.
second one almost 1,000 pages. Like, that's a great idea. No publisher ever, which means she's taking her power back. Because from everything I heard in the interview, like it just sounded like they've kind of been bullying her for a long time. And I just think like she's sticking it to the man, aka her publisher, and that's really what I got from all of that.
That is super fun. I am so excited about like 2 books back to back, but like part of me is like, I know I'm going to be emotionally scarred from like the first one and have to wait until January for the second one. But like, I also know that I don't have the self control not to read the first one right when it comes out. And by first, I mean
I
6.
know.
But yeah.
Yes.
Okay. My thing
I
that I was absolutely shocked about was that she said, and B, like, just that she was willing to, like, come out and say it,
mhm.
that Bryce and Hunt were endgame, because I totally did not think that. I wasn't sure if, like, it
Yeah.
was gonna be Azrael for her, but I
Mhm.
100% did not think that they they were endgame at all, because that's just, like, generally not her style, which, to be fair, Crescent City is, like, she said it. It was, like, kind of like her little passion project. It's the
Yeah.
same but different, you know? But that was
Mhm.
shocking to me. I was quite surprised.
So I know a lot about Crescent City because of just knowing about like the Massiverse in general, but like I've not read it yet. And I was waiting specifically until these like the Actar 6 dropped to read it. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna do I don't think I'm gonna do Throne of Glass reread this year.
I
I don't
mean,
know.
we've read
I
it,
don't
like,
know.
what,
We'll see.
twice in the last, like, 12
Twice last
months?
year. I know.
Like, yeah.
I know. I feel like I have a pretty good grasp on Throne of Glass. And so I don't,
Yeah.
as much as I would thoroughly enjoy reading it again, I don't think I need to before Ektar comes out.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'm definitely going to read Crescent City and I'm going to do an Akatar reread. Now, it might be overestimating my self-control, but I'm going to try to wait.
That's so
My
crazy to
only
me.
thing is, like, I'm gonna have to stay off of social media for, like, 3 months because all
Oh,
the
yeah.
spoilers are gonna be on there. I might have to read it and just be,
That's a good point.
um so, my theories about, like so obviously with the size of this next book, it's a novella, so it's
Yeah.
clearly, like, more story or something,
It's a
it's
little
like a
longer than
smaller
Frost and Starlight, which I honestly loved,
I did
but a
too. I don't know why
little
people throw shade
but
on
very
Frost and
short
Starlight,
still. Yeah.
yeah. And so, yeah, I think it might be Moore's POV on that, which I think will be
That would
so
be
interesting. I think that's going to
interesting.
connect so many things because
She's
there's like
always
that
around.
theory. Yes. Well,
Yeah.
and there's so much more to her
Mhm.
than what we know, I think. And, you know, SJM's refusal to answer some questions kind of were an answer in and of themselves because it was like,
Yeah.
"Ooh, we're gonna find out more about that." And there's this theory floating around that Moore is um oh my gosh, my mind's totally
A
blanking
Croatian
on.
witch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that she's the Iron Teeth one, Manon's second, the one who, like,
Oh,
was
that
had
she's
the cabin with
Asterin? I hadn't heard
Astrid. Oh my gosh,
that.
my brain was saying Asteria, and I was like, "Nope, that's something different." I was like, "I can't think."
That's Crescent
Yes.
City,
So
actually.
I've I know, yeah. I've heard that theory that Moore is Astrid, and
I would
there's,
be
like, a couple of
obsessed with
things, like,
that.
that I know, right? Well, and there's
Obsessed.
another theory that when the witches made the yielding, that they just went that was a portal that wasn't, like, actually death.
Yeah.
And, like, can you imagine if they ended up in freaking, like, Prithian or something? You know, like, that would just be the coolest thing ever, and I really can't wait to find out about the whole Elaine Asriel,
Yeah.
Lucian, like, Gwen, because there is, like, evidence, if you will, of a connection between Asriel and Elaine. There's
Yeah.
also evidence with a connection between Gwen and Asriel, so it's like,
Yeah.
what are we
I don't
gonna
know.
I think
It'll
we
be
just we
interesting.
need an Asriel book. Like, we just
Yeah.
need to know about him.
Yeah. I think I don't know, I think it's gonna be really interesting. I, like, hesitate to predict things because I don't like to be wrong, but also, like, I predicted Violet's second signet, just saying. So,
Yeah, so you got this,
um,
in other words. Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. I think, honestly, more being a witch doesn't click for me, as
Mm,
amazing as that would be. I feel like it kind of devalues their sacrifice if that happened, even though they didn't know that would happen, you know? I don't
right.
know. I just feel like that's, like, such an integral part of Throne of Glass that, like, it has to exist, it has to stay, you know, why
Mm,
she only has 3 worlds right now. You know, we have no
right.
evidence of any of the other witches making it. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's just
Mhm.
something that doesn't add up for me. I love the idea of Feyre, Nesta, and Elaine's mom being a witch. I think that makes total
Oh,
sense, how Nesta can always
I
see through glamours, that
definitely
kind of thing. Yeah, I feel
yes,
like
well, and the
that is
the
very
ironwood bed,
yeah,
that wasn't an accident. That
yeah.
was not an accident.
For sure. So would love to know more about that. I think that we probably will learn a little bit more about that maybe because also Reese and Tamlin seem to know something about their mother. But like they never say
Mm.
what, which kind of pisses me off. But
I know, it's like
yeah.
these little, like, "Oh, yeah, you didn't know?" Like, "No, so
Yeah.
tell me." Which I know for SJM was, like, very intentional because I
Yeah.
think oh my gosh, I think between these next 2 books, like, so many questions are going to be answered,
Yeah.
and then we're gonna have to rip our hearts out
It'll be
and
fine.
wait for the last part.
As long as we don't
I
wait another 6
wonder
years, I'll be fine.
yeah, yeah, seriously. I wonder if she's going to do the last Crescent City book before she'll come out with the last Sakatar.
I think she probably will, but I think we'll get some answers, like, you'll see it's
Yeah.
so incredibly intertwined at the point that this
Mm,
last Crescent City book, like, ends, like, it would be hard
mhm.
to not keep it together, if that makes sense, so I think we'll see
Yeah.
Crescent City characters in 6 and 7, and I
Mm,
think
okay.
in Crescent City 4, we'll see Actor characters fairly,
Well,
like, prolifically, is that the right
okay.
word?
Well, that's
But yeah.
exciting. Yeah, I've been, like, really excited to read it. I just also know that that first book is hard to get into, and every time I try, I'm like, "No." Well, because 'cause I've gone straight from, like, a fantasy, like all of these, like, magical whatever, whatevers to, like, this present day, like, modern
Yeah.
day scene, and I'm like, "Ew."
And it's
So
like yeah,
need I think what I need to
eh,
do is read, like, a regular romance book and then read Crescent City because I think that'll lower my expectations a little bit and kind of,
yeah.
like, recenter, like, and then read Crescent City first and then do the actual reread.
Yeah,
All
that would
these
actually
people
give you a lot of insight. I don't know. It's
all
not my favorite series, but it's so intertwined to my favorite
mm,
world, like, okay, I'm in.
right, yeah,
I'll reread it.
I know. I guess.
Yeah.
Um, so many people are like, "Oh, if we start our reread this week, it's only 46 weeks until the reveal," or it's not
I don't
46
think
weeks,
I
but, like,
could stretch it 46 weeks if I tried, like
I was like, "How slow are you guys reading? Or are you reading, like, 18 books at a time? You can only read a chapter a
oh
week?
my
I
gosh,
don't
that
even
would
know."
kill me. I was
I
reading,
know.
like, 3 books the other week, or I was in the middle of 3
Yeah.
series the other week, and it was killing
Yes.
me. I
Yeah.
hated it. Ugh. Okay,
I
do
know.
you have any, like,
Yeah.
last words about anything?
Mm, I don't think so, just that I'm so excited. I
Me
loved how
too.
real she was in the episode, like, I just thought, like, she was I just thought she was great.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed the whole episode, and I'm excited to see what she comes out with next.
yeah. I appreciated that they, like, focused on her and focused on the books and, like, didn't, go on tangents about, things happening in the world and that kind of stuff, like
Worldly
yeah,
yes,
like, nobody wants to know, okay?
definitely.
Like, nobody needs your opinion, like, we love you for you, you don't have to, like,
Mhm.
you know
Try to gain support, yeah.
yeah.
The other thing I wanted to highlight really quickly is just how open she was about her pregnancies, her births, her
Mhm,
mental health. I just thought that was something because so many women and men look up to her and see her as like this pillar of the community because she is. And I
mhm,
think her talking about that stuff and how important how therapy saved her and all of these things that happened to her, I just think, like, her sharing those things will have, like, a huge ripple effect and was, like,
mhm,
really powerful, maybe more than she really expected it to be.
yeah,
But I thought that might have been my favorite part other than the announcement. I think
yeah.
that was my favorite part of the interview.
I think it is encouraging too to hear from someone who had really difficult pregnancies. She had a really difficult birth, but she did it again. And it's like, I think for like moms that had really difficult pregnancies and stuff, like I remember with Reagan, I was like, well, I'm one and done, like not doing this again.
Mhm.
But like, it's nice to hear, like, I did it again and I don't regret it because these children are so special. Like, they're my world. They are
Mm,
so
yeah.
valuable and loved.
Mm,
And
yep.
I just think that's really cool, because I think when we have difficult pregnancies, traumatic births, that kind of thing, we kind of wonder, is it worth it to do it again?
Yeah,
And so it's nice
definitely.
to hear someone say, in a world of don't do it, focus on your
Mm,
career, focus on blah, blah, blah,
mhm.
kind of this war against women and children right
Mhm.
now, it feels like.
Yeah.
It was nice to hear someone say, yes, my kids are so worth it because they are.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I love that so much. Go
Well,
SJM, we love
yeah,
her.
can't wait. We'll
I
be,
know.
we'll be ready to go. I mean, you might not be, you might have self-control, but I will not, so I'm
I
just
talk a
gonna
big game.
suffer.
I doubt I'm good.
I'm gonna read it all in one day, and then I'm gonna suffer for the next 3 months, it'll be fine.
Yep.
Um,
Alright, something to look forward to.
yeah. So, speaking of parenting, let us get into the 4 parenting styles because I think to, like, have any kind of parenting style, discipline, that kind of discussion, we have to kind of go back to the roots of it. And so we were talking the
Yes.
other day, and you were saying that there's 4 parenting styles that you were taught when you were getting your degree. Can
Mhm.
you kind of take us through each of those and then we can kind of break them down a little more.
Yeah, definitely. So, there's authoritative or sometimes called democratic parenting. There's authoritarian parenting. There's permissive, and then there is uninvolved or neglectful. There's a couple of different ways to say that. Um, the the main differences between the four are, authoritative is, parents are supportive, emotionally responsive, but still maintain really clear expectations and boundaries. The common traits are it's why it's called sometimes democratic parenting is because the parents involve the children in discussions. Parents still have the final say, parents set and hold the boundaries, but children are very much a part of and are given a voice in authoritative parenting. Um, and, like an example would be kind of like, I understand you're upset that you have more screen time. It's frustrating, but the rule is one episode, so we're turning it off. There's no like, because I said so, whatever. That takes us into our next style of parenting, which is authoritarian. It's a very like strict rules, strong authority, but there's very little, if any, emotional discussion. It's, the because I said so, high expectations for obedience, punishment focused discipline, which I think kind of makes it stand out from all the other parenting styles. Um, and, it would, if we're sticking with the same example, it's like turn off the TV right now. We're not discussing this, like, period, end of story.
Uh-huh.
Permissive parenting is very loving, very responsive, but there are very minimal boundaries or expectations for children. Um, there's it's more of like friends or like the kids make a lot of decisions in permissive parenting. And the a good example would be like, oh, if you don't feel like cleaning your room today, like that's okay. Just kind of letting the child take the seat of being in charge. And then uninvolved or neglectful parenting is very much of
What it sounds like.
what it sounds like. Yeah, parents will provide basic needs in, I would say, a lot of cases. Sometimes they don't even provide basic needs, but they're largely just disengaged from anything remotely parenting related, like very limited emotional involvement, very few rules or guidance of any kind, like low awareness of what kids are doing, um, kind of like do whatever you want. Like, what does this have to do with me? Kind of attitude. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of the overview. I know that's kind of like a little wordy, but um, I I will definitely say, like, right off the cuff, like, there's no question about which parenting style is, the best parenting style. It is authoritative parenting, democratic parenting, 10 out of 10. All the statistics say so. Children have higher emotional regulation, better academic outcomes, stronger social skills, higher confidence. Um, I mean, it blows all the other parenting styles away. Um, I think there's, the unresponsive, I don't care parent. That's obviously the worst, the worst possible parent you can have because, um, what support are they giving? There's poor emotional regulation in kids who are raised by these types of parents, academic struggles, higher risk behaviors, and really just not great outcomes for kids.
Trying to get
And
that attention that they're not getting.
Yes. Well, and, a lot of times they've not been taught these things. They've not been taught emotional regulation. They don't know how to manage emotions. They don't know how to have proper relationship skills. And, they're kind of in this little world of their own because there's not like like someone parenting and governing them. And so, probably turn into little tyrants trying to govern themselves, or, a lot of times I feel like it makes kids like grow up too fast and they have to make all these decisions and stuff for themselves. Um, Now there's I don't know how much into, like, the research and stuff you wanna get, but I think, outside of authoritative parenting being just the absolute best, um, there are studies that say that permissive parenting is actually better than authoritarian parenting, and that's, we were talking a little bit about this earlier, but mostly that's because of the connection that you get in a permissive parenting versus authoritarian parenting is just like, I know everything, you know nothing, like, be quiet, like, I'm going to be, like, the person, that makes all these decisions and you have, like, no say in it. And I think that's really tough for kids, especially, not being able to have an emotional connection with their parents because to me, that leads more into issues, like, in adolescence,
Mhm.
because, you're gonna have kids if you're raised by authoritarian parents, you're gonna have kids who are very well behaved, because, they know what the punishment is otherwise. Um, so you're gonna have high levels of obedience, but you're all and, like, strong rule following, but you're also gonna have, like, high anxiety, lower self-expression because it doesn't feel safe to do so. Um, but but yeah, I just thought that comparison was, like, really interesting. The fact that permissive, you can do whatever you want parent, Disneyland mom has more positive outcomes than, the follow the rules parent. So,
That is really interesting. It made me think of something that you hear, especially in the homeschool community, um,
mm,
of like generally homeschool kids are a little more sheltered. I know I
mhm,
was. But you hear like, oh, you're a homeschooler, you're a good kid, you're a good kid, but then you go crazy. And like thinking about that in the context of these parenting styles,
mhm,
um, that was never me. Um, but it is a lot of homeschooled kids, and I would say that I think that is the difference. I would say most homeschool parents veer towards authoritarian or authoritative parenting, just
mhm,
because if you're homeschooling, you're you're taking charge of your child's education, so you have a
right,
desire to take charge of it, you know?
mhm,
Um, Not to say there's no permissive parenting involved or neglectful parenting, any of that, but, like, overall, as a general rule, I feel like that's where it would be, and I see that, the kids that do come out, um, smarter, emotionally regulated, that kind of thing, probably come from authoritative parents. I
mhm,
don't know
yeah,
why they had to make those 2 the same, word
I
pretty much.
know,
But
so
then you
rude.
do see those kids that, are like this perfect little child growing up, and then high school, college, whatever it is, they just completely, like,
Go
jump off
off
a
the
cliff.
rails.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and, um and it makes sense because they finally have less structure in their life for the first time, and
mhm,
because they've never been given any decisions to make of their own, essentially. They're learning all these things that they should have learned at 3, 4, 5, 6, throughout their whole life. They should have been making little mistakes to learn how to make choices and to learn how to create their own structure, but they didn't learn those things because their parent did everything for them. They couldn't do anything, all that kind of thing. And, and they pay for it because their mistakes as, an adult are so much bigger than a mistake they would have made, you know, in preschool, in elementary school, middle school, even in high school, that kind of thing. So
100%.
that is
Yeah,
just really interesting to me, because I always kind of wondered about that. You hear like, "Oh, well, because you're homeschooled or because of this, because you're a good kid, you're going to be a bad kid." Which, first of all, why do we need to have an association like that at all? Like, let's just encourage people to be
yeah.
bad? Like, why? Let's tell a kid
Yeah.
they won't succeed in being, like, a productive member of society? Unnecessary. But,
Mm.
but I'm sure that's where that, what's the word? Um, Stigma comes from,
Yeah.
is that I bet a lot of times that is kind of how it works. But yeah, that was interesting that permissive parenting is more, effective than authoritarian parenting, which makes
You know,
sense. I mean, at least you have some kind of connection to your child and,
mm,
at least they might come to you with this kind of stuff, even if they don't really know what structure or how to create structure for themselves. Or
yes.
they've created
Yeah,
too much structure for themselves because the parent has not, that kind of thing.
so most of the time you're gonna see kids who don't have any structure because kids don't know how to create that
Mhm,
structure. They need it, they crave it, but they can't create it for themselves. So permissive parents, kids who are raised by permissive parents are gonna really struggle with like impulse control, authority, boundaries, that sort of thing.
mhm,
Um, and so, but like you said, there is that connection aspect. They have a relationship with their parent, and so there are more positive outcomes and those things can be taught, even at older ages. Like, will
for
you
sure.
struggle through like a season or several seasons of your life? Like, yes, but with intentionality, like you can overcome those things. I mean, with all of these things you can overcome. I would say the hardest thing to overcome would probably be having like a non-responsive parent because you literally got nothing. You weren't fed emotionally,
Yeah,
you weren't given any structure, you weren't really given much love, it's like so I don't know, that to me is like the most devastating type of parent because it's like, I would say most authoritarian parents are just that way for in my opinion, I think more than one reason. Like for one, that's what they know because that's how they were raised.
mm,
And 2, they lack the skills to be anything else. Um, Authoritarian parenting is nearly skillless, I think, because you're just like, because I said so." It's like you're gonna do it because I don't have the skills to have a conversation with you. I don't have the emotional, like, aptitude. I don't have the emotional ability to access my own emotions, so therefore you will not access yours because it makes me uncomfortable. Or, like, I'm in too much, like, pain from my own childhood. I can't deal with your childhood issues. Or there's just this extreme lack of knowledge about what kids are actually supposed to be like. But it's like, "Oh, no, children are seen and not heard." You will obey your parents when, 20 out of 10 times, it's like I feel like with authoritarian parenting, there's unrealistic expectations of kids. And to go back to what you said about the homeschool community, specifically the Christian homeschool community, I believe there's a big chunk of people who are authoritarian parents, and they use the Bible as like a foundation and a basis for that. And this is extremely controversial, but that really bothers me because Jesus was not an authoritarian. He was very authoritative. He was very relational and warm and loving. And, um, I know that he also got angry and he had all these emotions also, but it's like he's not a follow me because I said so. Like, follow me because you love me. Follow me because we have a relationship. Follow me because we have a connection. And so, to me, like, the most biblical way to parent is actually authoritative. But so many parents take the authoritarian because they take these little snippets of the Bible, like children have, obey your parents. Like, that doesn't mean that they have to obey you without having any say in anything. That doesn't mean they're seen and not heard. I feel like there's all these things added to the Bible verses. Authoritative parents also expect their children to obey them. And, Christian authoritative parents expect their children to obey them because that is the biblical standard. But and the whole staff and the rod, I feel like I could really get into that whole thing. We could put a resource in our show notes for anyone who's interested, but there's a specific Instagram account. They're called Flourishing Homes and Families. They have an excellent resource on the true depth and meaning behind the rod and the staff Bible verse. And I was blown away by it, and but basically it's not what it says, what people treat it as, like this open invitation to just basically hit children. Um, that's just not that's not what it is. But anyways, we could get into a huge tangent on that, like extremely, extremely controversial, that topic. But I do think that um I'm just gonna say it, parents use the Bible as a weapon sometimes, and you find that within the authoritarian parenting structure.
Yeah, I think that what you were saying about how Jesus asked us to follow him, I think the most important reason that we follow him and that we ask our kids to follow us and to respect us and to obey us is because we love them and we will lay down our lives for them. And Jesus is the
Mhm.
perfect example of that. Um,
I
and
love that.
even if you don't agree that Jesus is the perfect example of that, I think that we can all agree as parents, especially I feel like if you're listening to a podcast that's talking about this kind of thing, that you do love your kids and you would lay down your life for them. And that doesn't
Mhm.
mean that we're perfect, but it does mean that we're putting forth a real concerted effort. I did wanna push back on one thing you said about authoritarian parenting.
Yes.
You said that they lack the ability. I don't believe that anyone lacks the ability to do anything unless, like, you legitimately have, like, actual brain damage that, like, blocks out that part of, like, your brain to do something. I don't think anyone lacks the ability. I think that especially authoritarian, right? The
Mhm.
authoritarian parents use that as an excuse, though. I think it is an excuse of, "My
Mm.
parents did this, I don't know any other way. You know how to read. Go read a book." Sorry. Like,
Mhm.
it's not an excuse, and lacking the, um, ability to do something is not an excuse either because, while you may not have the training on it possibly, you are perfectly capable of going and receiving that training and looking into, what could be better or the different viewpoints and methods of parenting, and, you know, that kind of thing to where
Mm.
it's not a valid excuse, it's not an okay excuse. You don't have to agree with everything, but I don't think I hate it when people say not like, I hate it that you said it, but I just don't like when people say that that people lack the ability to do things or they're unable to do things because it's just such a cop out, and I feel like all we do in this world lately is just, make excuses for ourselves, for other
Mm.
people,
Mhm.
and making an excuse doesn't make a behavior acceptable. Um,
Oh, it's so
so
true. I agree with you 100%. I think when I said that, I meant more of like, so I think of like a lot of boomer parents, like the parents. I think my parents are older than your parents, but
my parents are really
I
young.
think of um my parents are total boomers. If you guys are ever listening to this, I love you, and please don't take anything I'm about to say personally. Um, I think, they were raised in a generation where it's just like that's just simply what is done. Like,
Mhm,
there is just this acceptable, like, this is how I was raised, and so this is how I'm going to raise my kids. And, some parents were raised by authoritative parents, so they continue that and they,
mhm,
continue to raise these emotionally intelligent, like wonderful, like people who turn into great adults. Um, But, a lot of, like, the silent generation was just, like, either, like, usually a combination of authoritative and unresponsive. And so, you have this whole generation of boomers who are like, you know, they care about their kids. I would say they're less unresponsive and more authoritarian because they want, they have their best children's best interest at heart and they want to do what's best, but they're like, oh, this is, we need to have discipline and all these things.
Mhm.
And just to just to be fair, I don't think our parents had the same resources that we have. So I think it's, um, not to say the resources weren't available, but I think it was,
You couldn't ask chat.
trying to go to the right. There's no chat. There's
Yeah.
no Google. It's
Yeah.
like strictly like if you saw like an infomercial on TV or you read a book that you got from the
Mhm.
library or the bookstore, like it's well, and the thing about that too is like, there's the wh- the there's a man author who came out with the discipline, like, of spanking your children method, and I forget what his name is, and I don't even care to know his name because I think he's a horrible person, but he came out with this whole and it's not just the spanking, but it was like, the cry it out method, like, the leaving, like, your children like, basically making it sound like your children are, um they don't need you as much and, like, completely going against the biological nature of responding to your children, and that was a huge book that came out in, like, late '80s, early '90s. I wanna say his name's Christopher something. I'll find it and we'll link it because of something that not to use, but, that was the parenting advice at the time, and, I remember my mom saying, like, that she would let us cry it out on our cribs because that was what was recommended, that was the parenting advice, that was the standard, but it went against her, like, internal
Instinct.
feeling of, like yes, like, of, like, "Oh, this doesn't feel right," but she's, like,
Yeah.
trying to do the right thing, and so, I think some parents got caught up in stuff like that too, where it's, like, um and maybe, you know, people don't have the skills or the self, I don't know, confidence or whatever to go against what experts are saying. Now, I think in our generation, we're more likely to be like, "Are you an expert? Like, you have an opinion, but are you the expert?"
Yeah.
Like, "No, I'm the expert on my child." And I think we have more of the ability to stand on our own 2 feet and say, like, "This is not what's best for my child. I do not feel right about this," and be able
Mhm.
to overcome that feeling of like, "Oh, but the experts say," versus I think in our when we were being raised, like, the experts were, like, the experts, and, like, you didn't go against the experts because, everyone was made to feel like they didn't know as much, so they had to follow these gurus or these,
Yeah.
experts of parenting,
The internet really changed the landscape of parenting. I think you're totally
For
right, like,
sure.
there was, like, okay, someone told you to check out this one book at the library, but, like, how else are you gonna, like, find out about stuff, you know? When I was first looking into
Mhm.
vaccines and stuff, my mom was like, "I'm so sorry, I just did what the doctor said." And I was like, "Well, you didn't have nearly the resources I did." So I can
Mhm.
totally see that. I think that more now, we have no excuse. Like this
Yes,
generation of
absolutely.
parenting,
Mhm.
millennials and on, I would say, like,
Mhm.
we're the ones who don't have an excuse for our behavior, for just doing what was done, that kind of thing. Because how
Oh, yeah.
many people hated how they were parented and then just turn around and parent the same way, frankly, out of laziness. Like, that's what it is.
Mhm.
Because if you
Yeah.
didn't like it, why are you doing it? It's literally the golden
Right.
rule. Like,
Be the change. Be
yeah,
the change.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's laziness not to. And it's hard. I'm not saying it's not difficult to change the
Mhm.
way you think, um, but it it is laziness to not do anything about it. Um,
Yeah.
we kind of talked about this. Do you think most parents choose a parenting style intentionally, or do we just kinda default to what we grew up with? Um,
Mm, yeah, I think most people just
yeah,
default and then kind of evolve over time. Um, most people will evolve over time. I think,
Uh-huh.
some again, like generally generationally and like, access to information has really changed the scope of parenting, like what you said.
Uh-huh.
So I think, like my parents specifically, they just parented the way they parented, and that was
Uh-huh.
the way that they parented. And they parented all of us the same. It's
Uh-huh.
the same consequences, the same rule structure. Well, for the most part, I think naturally as your children, like as you have younger children, but then you also have older children,
It's
the
hard being
younger
the
children,
oldest.
it's hard being the oldest because 'cause you're like the guinea pig, and then
Yeah.
it's hard being the youngest because it's like, "Oh, like, I didn't have to be that crazy, so you can have a little more freedom than the oldest." Or, like, you get burnt out, you're like, just I gotta,"
Whatever.
because you have all these just do whatever you
Yeah.
want. No. And so I think there's, like, this progression of how you parent and, like, this changing over time. So I did see that with my parents, but I would say, like, overall they were like a mix of authoritarian and permissive, but actually, I think they really they desired to be authoritative. I believe
Uh-huh.
that whole 100%, but I think based on their backgrounds and their knowledge and their, like, um, just the tools that they had in their toolbox at the time, like, I think it ended up being more authoritarian and permissive mix.
Uh-huh.
My mom was raised by an extremely permissive parent. I mean, like, the most permissive, and my dad was raised by the most authoritarian parents, and so it was, like, these very, like, these things that molded together. Um, Now I would say there have been democratic authoritative moments
Yeah.
and just stuff that they didn't hang on to, like, I don't know, I feel like they were just like this melting pot of parenting styles, but I do believe that their desire was to be authoritative
Mhm.
overall.
I think my parents were definitely heavy on the authoritative. I think they did a great job there with a dash of authoritarian, where there
Okay.
could have been conversation sometimes. You knew you were really in trouble if my dad sat down with
Mhm.
us and we just got
Uh-oh.
lectured. And so it could you could potentially turn that into a conversation if you
Mm,
had the stamina. But
right,
most of the time we were just like, just sit through it, just get over it,
right.
get through
Just get this
it.
over with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, like, a lot of their parenting style was authoritative, like, that was definitely their conscious goal, and I would say they
Mm,
achieved it most of the time, but there were times where it definitely was, "I do know best." Which, to be fair, sometimes your parents do know best. Like, there's plenty of
yeah.
times, when Reagan was hanging over her bunk bed the other day, I put the fear of God into her. And I said, "Listen,
Mm,
you could die if you fall headfirst over the top of your bunk bed." And, there was no room for a conversation there. Like,
yep.
that is what could
Yeah, and
happen, so
that's
you will not do that.
yep,
Um,
that's fair. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
so
totally fair.
I think I also lean that way, um, and I am, doing my best to, um, you know, stay heavily on the authoritative side. Um,
Mhm.
Oddly enough, not oddly enough, but, a book that I'm reading right now about parenting, that we talked about in book talk the other day, um, the magic the magic of love and logic in parenting, or some love and
Mm,
logic magic, is a book
mhm.
that they, um, recommended to me, my parents did, that they
Oh,
used, and reading through it, it was, I was like, "Oh, yeah, this is what I grew up with." But it's
like, "Oh, you guys followed
really
this to the letter, okay."
yeah, it is a really great book. Um it's so based on, um, I would say, consequences, whether they're good or bad
Mm,
consequences,
mhm,
prefacing consequences. This is what will happen, and then following through,
mhm,
which I think, um, is very authoritative. Uh,
Mhm.
there is the, giving tons of options, which I think is,
Mhm.
authoritative. I think it can also be a little permissive, but I think it's just kind of the way you do it and the
Yeah.
follow through there. But,
Mhm.
lots of options when it is reasonable to give options. Do
Yeah.
you want
Mhm.
to, play inside or outside right now? Do you want
Mhm.
to, uh, go to this playground or that playground, that slide or this slide? Not,
Mhm.
do you really want more screen time? Okay, I'll give you more screen time. That kind of
Right.
thing when you've
Yeah.
already
Mhm.
said that there's a screen time limit, kinda like the example you were using earlier.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think that, um, overall, I do a lot of what they did, which if you asked 13-year-old me, I would be shocked. Shocked.
Like, how dare you betray us like this? Like,
I
what is going
know. But
Oh,
yeah,
that's
do you have any
funny.
thoughts?
Oh, I think the power of choice is such an underrated parenting tactic. Um, I learned this from watching a friend of mine way before I ever had kids. She was like my picture perfect example of what a parent should
Mhm,
look like. And she was very authoritative and I'd say a little permissive, but just like miles and miles relationally. Like she was just like warm and present and just like I was like, wow, I want to be like you when I grow up. Like I just she's just one of the best moms I've ever known. But she would always give choices she was comfortable with and then allow her kids. She's like, "Do you want an
yeah,
apple or carrots for a snack? Do you want," yeah, like what you were talking about. And I
yeah,
just think that is so like throw that in your toolbox,
mhm,
especially start in toddlerhood because toddlers developmentally they're starting to form their autonomy, and so many times when we have these toddler tantrums or terrible twos or whatever, it's because they feel like they're not being heard, they feel like they can't communicate, and because they don't have choices when developmentally like it's normal and natural for them to start seeking out autonomy.
mhm,
um and so providing choices that so they can feel um in control while you also choosing like stuff that's okay and safe and whatever for them to choose. Like, do you want your blue shoes or you want your black shoes? Like, do
mhm,
you want, peanut butter and jelly for lunch or do you want chicken nuggets? Like, and you can offer those choices and then stick within those choices. I think where parents fall into the permissive side and like kind of like the issue is like, oh, what do you want for lunch?
mhm,
Like, "Oh, well, we don't have Burger King," or "We don't have"
yeah. Do you
and,
want
like,
peanut butter
that's
and
when all these
jelly or do you want chicken nuggets? I want mac and cheese. Well, that wasn't one of your options, but you could choose one of your options. Like,
Totally.
yeah,
Yes, and I think a permissive parent would be like, "Oh, mac and cheese, okay." Now, I'm not
mhm,
saying that it's bad if you're like, "Oh, we have mac and cheese, we can pivot to mac and cheese." Like, that's not, like,
yeah.
gonna devastate your parenting or, like,
It might
completely
just
ruin your
not have been
child.
a thought that you had.
Right.
Yeah.
But, like, your child's like, "Oh, I want steak and potatoes for lunch." You're like, "Okay, well, we don't have steak or potatoes, so, like, we're gonna have to pick
Yeah.
something else." I think where it just gets tricky is when we try to let the children just choose, like, "What do you want?" Like,
Mhm.
"What do you" like, now the older they get, like, the less you kind of have to, like, hammer on those choices, but it's like, um, I don't know,
Well,
very underrated
they need
parenting
structure,
tool right
right?
there.
And they need less and less
100%.
they need if they are given structure when they're young, in my opinion,
Mhm.
then they need less structure as they get older. So, like,
Well,
we're
because they
we're
already have it built in. Like,
exactly,
I
and
wouldn't
they're
say
aware
they
of how to create it themselves too, though, I think, you
yes.
know?
Yeah, I
So
would say they still need it, but they don't need you to, like, form it for them as much if
sure.
you've built the
Yeah.
foundation and the yes.
Yeah, like, you need to give a toddler just 2 options, or else it's kinda paralyzing, right? I don't know, what do I want?
100%.
Versus when you're talking to your 10-year-old and you're like, "Okay, "What do you want for lunch?" They probably know what's in the fridge, you know?
Mhm.
Like,
Yep.
and they can just say, "I saw leftovers in there, I'll have that kind
Yeah.
of thing. But yeah, I think it comes back to, like, we're creating safe opportunities for them to make choices, whether it's as small as lunch or as big as,
Mhm.
"I've asked you to do this. You can continue to ignore me, and this will happen, or you can obey, and this is what's gonna happen." And
Mhm.
they're making those small decisions that result in small consequences so that they have the skills. The skills are completely transferable to big decisions with big consequences. It's
Yep,
it's the
definitely.
it's the making the decision part that they have to learn, and I've, like,
Yep.
seen that just even over the last 4 years with Reagan and now Kennedy of Reagan is so able to make some decisions that I couldn't have even fathomed 2 years ago, you know?
Mm. Mhm.
Um, where she might say, "I want mac and cheese instead of chicken nuggets or, um, peanut butter and jelly," and I say, "Well, I didn't even think of mac and cheese. We can have mac and cheese today. Sure."
Yeah.
You know?
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, let's move into, uh, social media and kind of just
Mm.
the hot button parenting right now. I
Mhm.
would argue, or here's a question, is gentle parenting actually gentle? Or is it just permissive parenting that someone has adjusted the branding on? What do you think about that?
Um, I think it depends because I think both things are happening. I think there's some parents who are like, "Oh, we can't talk about that right now," or we're about, "Oh, you want that? Okay, that's fine." So I think, the coined term gentle parenting could mean a lot of different things. I think it could mean that you're a permissive parent. I also think it could mean that you're an authoritative one. I think it just depends on w- who's doing it. Now, I think is gentle parenting, like, a thing? Like, not really, no. Like, you're gonna revert back to one of these parenting styles.
Yeah.
Um, but, I can authoritative parenting be gentle? Like, 100%. Like, absolutely it can because you don't have to yell and be crazy and
Mhm.
this big towering force to that's the whole point of authoritative parenting is like having this connection and the mutual respect with your children that you don't need to do that. So I authoritative parenting can absolutely be gentle, but I also think there's another side of it where gentle parenting is permissive parenting. So I
Mhm.
think it depends. I don't know. I don't have a better answer than that. I'm sorry.
I think, um, I think a few things about that.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I think that gentle parenting came into existence with our inability. I think it was, about 10 years ago, give or take, right? And I think
Mm,
it came
yeah,
into an
probably.
existence with our inability to identify middle ground, whether
Mm,
that's politics, beliefs, whatever it is. It all kind of started around the same time of you don't agree with me, you know, we're one side or the other. There is no meeting in the middle. There's no middle ground. And with parenting,
mm,
I think it came from a lot of kids that were maybe parented authoritarianly
mm, mhm.
that are just trying. They're making the effort, right? They're trying
Right.
to not do that because they know they didn't like that. Like we were talking about, like they are making that effort and they are trying to learn. And that is just the complete opposite of authoritarian parenting. Whereas I would
Mhm.
argue that authoritative parenting is a middle ground. Same with,
Mhm.
cry it out versus bed sharing until they're 10 versus sleep training,
Mm,
being going
mhm.
walking alongside your child and teaching them how to sleep. Um,
Mhm.
you know, how many things are there? um, that we just refuse to acknowledge or try to find any type of middle ground on. I think that that's where
Mhm.
gentle parenting came out of, and I think that, we are kind of trying to get over that now. Like, I think our generation is, and, what's the generation after millennials? Z? Gen Z?
Mm. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think millennials and Gen Z are trying to recover from that a little bit,
Mhm.
and I would argue that authoritative parenting is kinda making a little bit of a comeback. Like, it seems that
Yeah.
people are trying, if not always succeeding, and I think gentle parenting is kind of one of those things that is kind of being phased out a little bit in the sense of permissive parenting, the side of
Yeah.
it. Um,
Yeah, I think the more access to information we have and the more, like, we kinda see, um, the outcomes of certain things, and then you mix that with our own personal experiences, I think that
mhm,
I agree that that's where that was born out of. But I do think the more we learn and the more we see it kind of like that the permissive part where we're like, "Okay, like, maybe that's too far on the spectrum,"
yeah,
I think people who were raised by, like, extremely authoritarian parents, like, that just there was no wiggle room for anything, like, that was the only way that you were raised, like,
mhm,
I think those parents have more of a tendency to be permissive and
mhm.
gentle because, um,
They're just trying to find the
you know
opposite.
Yeah, because I
Yeah,
think, my mom when I think back, I don't know, like, a whole lot about my grandma's upbringing, but what I do know is, like, her parents were very, like, authoritarian or unresponsive, like, there's like, her dad had an alcohol addiction, her mom was, like, supposedly kind of, like, mean, and so, she had, like, a really rough upbringing, and so I think that caused her to be a super permissive parent, and then, you know, my mom I think my mom this is no shade to my grandma, I love my grandma, but I think my mom had more care for us than her mom had for her, like, just
mhm,
in general, and so my mom was so intentional about every little thing that she did,
mhm,
and, so I think despite being raised by a permissive parent, like arguably one of the most permissive parents ever, she still strived for authoritative. So I think, it does like you are forced to learn a lot more skills when you're raised by a permissive parent, but I do think that there's still potential for you to become an authoritative parent in like when you become a parent if you were raised permissive.
mhm.
I think there are better outcomes. Well, and research backs it up that there are better outcomes for children raised by permissive versus authoritarian.
Yeah. Okay, well, we have time for one more question before Momtroversial moments.
Okay.
So I'm gonna ask, are we raising emotionally intelligent kids or kids who think every feeling needs, like, a whole committee meeting with snacks and all?
Oh, man. I think that depends on who you ask. I think some people, I think emotional intelligence arguably is like the foundation for everything. I think the way we handle our emotions like literally trickles into every aspect of our life, like how we handle ourselves physically, mentally, spiritually. And so I think the importance of raising emotionally intelligent kids is like top 3 most like important things that you do for your children. However, I do think some parents like take it too far, like to where they allow too much there's too much permission with their kids. Like you have that permissive nature. And so kids are like, oh, but these are my feelings and blah, blah, blah. And it's hard
Mhm,
to differentiate between like, oh, my child doesn't like that or they don't want to do that or, you know, whatever with like actually I'm not articulating what I'm trying to say very well, but I guess, like, an example would be, like, "Oh, my child doesn't wanna do that, and they feel a certain way about it." And I think some parents would just be like, "Oh, that's how they feel. We're just gonna leave that." Even if, like, that's not necessarily something that a child should be carrying. Like, as a parent, you still have a huge responsibility to emotionally manage your child
Mhm.
at certain ages. Like, your 3-year-old should not be making all these emotional decisions. Like, if they don't feel like doing something, but they need to do it anyways, like, unfortunately, we're gonna have to do it anyways, and maybe we need to reframe it to where the child feels better about it. But I think you get a lot of kids who are just like, "No," and they don't listen to authority. Like, they're like, when we focus too much on, like, the whole every feeling needs a committee meeting, or if we allow our kids too much emotional autonomy at too young of an age, I think, like, that it doesn't create emotional intelligence. I think it actually makes kids feel a little bit out of control or too much in control, which is actually not good for their development.
Yeah,
Um
I think it's just all about teaching, because you have to teach your kid that not
Mhm.
everything is gonna go their way 100% of the time, because if you don't teach
Yep.
them that, they become, like, awful adults. Nobody wants to be around
Yeah.
them. They can't hold a job
Tyrants.
or, like,
Mhm.
yeah, it's
Entitled. Yes,
yeah,
very
very
entitled.
entitled. And so I think that that is, like, a really big issue in the or emotional intelligence field.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
but not to keep going back to Love and Logic, but it's a really great book.
Yeah.
They
Link it in
talk
the show
about,
notes.
yes, they talk about how, I don't know about your kids, but every single night my kids would prefer not to clean up. Like, I can I can predict that
Yep.
100% of the time.
Mm.
And so
Yep.
something that they recommended and we, have implemented is they can choose to clean up or not, but if they don't choose to clean up, then mommy and daddy will clean up, and while that sounds all well and good, whatever mommy and daddy cleans up is not gonna be available to them for a specific period of time. They're gonna
Mhm.
lose those toys because they're not caring for their toys and they're not respecting their toys and mommy and daddy's space
Yep.
and time, even their space, it's their playroom, but,
Yeah. Mhm.
um, they're not respecting that, and so there are gonna be consequences for that, and they're well aware of it in the beginning of, I mean, at this point, they're just aware of it because we've
Mhm.
implemented it over,
Right.
um, the past few months or so. But it really is like, okay, yes, of course your kid doesn't wanna clean up. Of course your kid doesn't wanna share that thing, and maybe there is a time where they don't have to share that.
Mhm.
We don't force sharing of special toys, their
Same.
lammies,
Yeah.
their dollies, that kind of thing, like, they both have a special lamb and a special doll, and we don't enforce sharing of that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But, sharing of just general toys, sharing
Yeah.
of, "I'm hogging all the Magna-Tiles and I'm not gonna let you play with that." No, that's not
Yeah.
acceptable. You might feel like that's
Yeah.
what you want, but that is not
Right.
an acceptable way to live your life,
Right.
especially as an
100%.
adult. So, while we
Yeah.
can have a conversation about it, and I'm happy to have a conversation about it most of the time, um, it doesn't mean that I'm gonna do what you want. We're just gonna have a conversation
Yeah.
about it. So
Yeah. No, I think that's really powerful. And, teaching kids that they're not I know this is gonna really rub some people the wrong way, but teaching them that they are not the center of the universe
yeah.
is, like, really, I mean,
Which is
not to make them
hard
feel
because,
unimportant. I
like,
know,
low
because
key,
we
they
love them so much.
are
Yeah.
the center of
I
our
know.
universe, but also they're not, like
Yes. Right. Like, it's hard, and I think that's where permissive parents come in because 'cause they're just like, "Oh, you're perfect, and I love you. You can do
yeah.
whatever you want." Like, it's not born out of, like, laziness or not wanting to do anything.
Mhm.
It's like, I think permissive parents are just like love their children for the most part, just like love their children so much that they just want to give them everything and let them do whatever they want
Mhm.
because they think like that's the best thing. But
Theoretically, when
I think,
someone's nice to you, it's a nice thing.
right.
But
Yeah.
from a child parent
There,
perspective, that's harder.
there has to be boundaries and stuff with
Mhm.
it. And, um, yeah, going back to the like raising emotionally intelligent kids, I would argue that that is the foundation of everything because, everything you think about in life, like, how do you handle disappointment? That goes back to emotional intelligence. How do you handle disagreements, relational issues, conflict? All of that goes back to emotional intelligence. And I think, those are like the foundations of all of our daily interactions with our friends, our parents, our kids, our bosses, our coworkers, people on the road, people at the grocery store. Like, it's just emotional intelligence is foundational for everything else that we do in life. And so I believe that that is just paramount and so, so, so important. But I do think like every feeling does not need a committee meeting. And sometimes like you're just gonna have to feel your feels and get over it. Like, and
Mhm.
I don't make a habit of that. Like I have a lot of conversations with my kids. So many, I probably have too many because like sometimes I have to be like, I'm not having any more, we're not talking about it past this point. Like,
Yeah.
say your last thing because I'm done with this conversation. But I do have older kids too. So like my oldest is now 7. And so, her and I have a lot different of a conversation than what I would have with my 2-year-old because,
Yeah.
like, oh, does that make you feel sad? Does that make you feel mad? That's like, at 2, that is, you know, age appropriate versus like, my 7-year-old can, a lot more eloquently articulate, what she's feeling and why she's feeling that and all that kind of stuff. And so, starting with the foundations of what are the different emotions, what are the different feelings, and helping your kid to recognize when they're having those feelings, like, that's where you start.
Mhm.
That's where you start when like, as small as possible. Like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you're mad right now." Like, I'm like, "Oh." Then your child internally is like, "Oh, I'm mad right now. Okay." And then
Let's
over
learn about
time, you can
this.
develop right, you
Yeah.
can develop that skill, like, "What do I do when I'm mad?" Like, "Oh, I'm gonna hit somebody because I don't have the words because I'm 2."
Mhm.
And then you say, "Okay." And I think this is where gentle parenting gets such a bad rap. Like, "Oh, we don't hit, we use our words." But
Mhm.
you have to model what that looks like. You
Mhm.
have to say, like, because understanding that 2-year-olds, how normal and natural it is for their development to bite, to hit, to be physical, throw things, all that kind of stuff, that
Mhm.
is 1000% normal for 2 and 3-year-olds.
Mhm.
And I'm so tired. I'm going to get on a soapbox for 1 second. I'm so tired of people labeling children because they're having age appropriate behaviors. Like,
Mm.
learn something about your child and stop overreacting. Like, just step in. Like, yes, you do have to say, like, I'm not going to allow you to hurt anybody. You're mad right
Mhm.
now, but we don't hurt other people. Both things are true. And then over time, you can say, like, oh, instead of hitting, you say, I don't like that, and over time, you build those skills. It's something, Charlie being 2, it's something that I'm, right in the thick of right now with
Mhm.
him, of teaching him. Cause yeah, his first go to is just smack someone right in their face. And because he's the 3rd kid, it's extremely aggressive.
Yeah.
Um, but it all starts now. So,
Yeah.
I
I
don't
love
know.
it. Uh,
Yeah.
do you have a momtroversial moment for us? Let me see. Wait, let me see if I can do it like Leah. Leah does it so well. We're gonna go to our momtroversial moments, the moments that make us laugh, cry, and just say, "Yep, that's mom life." So, give us your story.
Oh man, it's been a while since I've been on. So I feel like I have 86 momtroversial moments. Um, I have been sick for over a month, which is why I've not been on. Okay.
So
I
rough.
Charlie is so he just turned 2.
which
couple
is
days
like
ago.
illegal, but that's fine.
I literally, excuse me.
Whatever.
What do you mean you're two? Um, so he's showing all the signs of like wanting to potty train. And I kind of had to find that out the hard way because like sometimes he'll say I want to go potty, but like he doesn't really know what that means, whatever, whatever. Well, he started taking his diaper off for naps,
Oh.
and he doesn't do it every time, but like this one time I went I went in and he had taken his diaper off, pooped in his bed and on his sleep sack. And then he was of course
Oh.
playing with it because it looks fun and sensory and whatever. And then it was like all in his hair and his face
Ugh.
and all over everything. And I was like, this is fine. But we've unofficially started potty training because I'm like, I can't do the poop in the bed situation again. Surprisingly, it was not the worst poop incident we've had as parents, but, you know, it was up there. It's
Crazy.
pretty bad.
Goodness gracious. Oh, yeah, we love potty training. Um,
Mm,
mine, happened while we were out the other day. We were running some errands. We went to Hobby Lobby, and we were looking at the Easter stuff, which prompted, just a quick little conversation about what Easter was all about. And, they're
nice.
aware of the story of Jesus dying on the cross and raising from the dead.
Mhm.
And so I just kind of connected that to Easter, essentially. And
Yeah.
that's what the actual holiday is. And so next after that, we went to Home Depot. And at Home Depot, they were playing while I talked to a cabinet guy because I'm desperately trying to find an affordable way to redo our kitchen. It's not really going well. We'll see. Um, but so we're playing, and Reagan, or I'm talking, and Reagan and Kennedy are playing behind me. And Kennedy goes, "Look, Mom, we're dying on the cross." And they've taken their umbrellas and made their umbrellas into a cross, and Reagan is lying across it like this,
Oh my gosh.
arms out, spread wide. And I was
Stop.
like,
In Home Depot.
yeah, I was like, okay, um, just don't lay on the floor.
What are you
like,
gonna say about that?
like, what do you say to that? Reagan has been really, uh, confronting her mortality lately. We've gotten a lot of those
Mm.
questions. And so, it was more or less a natural progression, but I just didn't expect it to happen at Home Depot?
Oh my
So,
gosh.
yeah,
Wow.
good times.
Yes.
Uh, yeah. Well, thank you so much for listening to us. If you have time and you haven't, we really appreciate it if you can rate us 5 stars. If you don't want to rate us 5 stars, feel free not to rate us. Um, but we would really
Big truth.
appreciate 5-star ratings. And contrary to what that just sounded like, we totally take all sorts of criticism. You can email us at
Yep.
momtroversialpodcast@gmail.com. Actually, I think it's momtroversialpodcast.main@gmail.com. And message us on Instagram at Momtroversial Podcast. We love to hear what you want to hear, any questions you have, any comments. We really do want to not only talk about what you want to hear about, but um, we're obviously always open to learning too. If you feel like something we said may not be accurate, that kind of thing, we
Yep,
want to know about it.
definitely.
So next week we will chat about how the parenting styles affect discipline, consequences, punishment, that kind of thing. But until
Mhm.
then, keep it momtroversial. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.